picking up with Act 3. We're not going to get through Act 3. We'll finish Act 3 on Wednesday, but hopefully we'll get at least through Hamlet's scene with Ophelia. So we're going to skip a little bit at the beginning. The king and queen talk with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. They essentially say, we can't figure out what Hamlet's problem is. And they Gertrude and Claudius say, keep at him. Okay? Exit Rosencrantz and Guildenstern on page 1279. Line 29. So, Act 3, Scene 1, line 29. The king says, to the queen, we have closely sent for Hamlet hither, that he, as 'twere by accident, may here confront Ophelia. Her father and myself, lawful espiles, will so bestow ourselves that, seeing unseen, we may of their encounter frankly judge and gather by him as he has behaved, if it be the affliction of his lover, know that thus he suffers for. So, what are they going to do? What's the king of Polonius going to do? Are they going to exeunt the stage like the stage direction says? Well, if they do it in such a way that they can still hear everything. Okay? Go to, briefly, we're going to come back to where we were, page 1282 in the 11th edition. This is Act 3, Scene 1 still, and it's after Hamlet's to be or not to be speech, and after his conversation with Ophelia. The king says, line 154, love, his affections do not that way tend, nor what he spake, though it lacked form a little, was not like madness. What words is he talking about? Hamlet's entire to be or not to be speech and his conversation with Ophelia. Now, if the king could hear the entire to be or not to be speech, it wasn't a soliloquy. Period. Polonius heard it. Ophelia heard it. Turn for a moment. I've never looked at this, literally, until just now. Pages 1341 and 42 in your book. There are portions of a shooting diary from Kenneth Branagh's 1996 version of Hamlet. Okay? And on page 1342, right in the middle of the first paragraph, in to be or not to be, I'm quoting, in to be or not to be, Ken wants to show Hamlet alone with his mirror images in the vast space of the mirrored hall. And the hall is nothing but mirrors. It's like a carnival funhouse. Okay? He has to be careful not to give the soliloquy an energy or momentum that it does not need. Those qualities are coming soon enough in what follows when he encounters Ophelia. Now, Branagh is the director and producer of this. He's known for his Shakespearean adaptations. He broke on the film scene in 1985 or so. I think he was around 21, 22, did Henry V, etc. He's done a bunch of Shakespeare things. It's not a soliloquy. So, the queen says, I shall obey you. Now, Ophelia is there. Ophelia has heard everything the king just said. Okay? So, Ophelia, you're going to do this, and we're going to spy on you. The queen says, for your part, Ophelia, I do wish that your good beauties be the happy cause of Hamlet's wildness. So shall I hope your virtues will bring him to his wonted way again, to both your honors. And I think that to both your honors implies, and if you can bring Hamlet back from the abyss, back from his madness, we will honor you. You'll get something good out of it. Okay? And she says, Madam, I wish it may. Polonius tells her, walk you here. He hands her a book. He says, that such a show of exercise may color your loneliness, and you've got a gloss down at the bottom. The book is probably a book of prayers or devotions of some kind. She's supposed to be walking, meditating, praying to God, etc., etc. Okay? So, you have the stage. Tiring house is back there where actors come and go. Most of the time at the Globe, Shakespeare's Globe today, there are curtains here that can be drawn all the way off to the side so that this is just an opening and not like a doorway. Often they'll have doors actually on hinges. They can be taken off, etc. Where are they going to put themselves? Earlier speech, Polonius says, we will hide behind an arras over here. Okay? So, he says, Ophelia, you walk this way. Gracious, so please you. Let's go hide. Hamlet's coming. Okay? And then he says a comment about how with devotions usage, line 47, and pious action, we do sugar over the devil himself. All right? What's he mean, sugar over? Mary Poppins famously said, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. That's kind of what he's saying. With what? With devotion's visage, a look of holiness on one's face, and pious action, going to church, etc., helping the poor. You see celebrities, politicians do this all the time. My own jaded, they don't mean a word of it, The king, tis too true. Why? How smart a lash that speech doth give my conscience. That's an aside. The audience hears him say this, but nobody else. What's the king telling us? Guilty. Guilty as charged by the ghost. The harlot's cheek, beautied with plastering art, is not more ugly to the thing that helps it than is my deed to my most painted word. So, Polonius mentions covering something over to make it look better. Okay? You put lipstick on a pig and you still got a pig. Just looks a little better. The king uses the imagery of a hooker with nice makeup to make her look a little better. Hamlet is going to use the same idea of cosmetics later on. Shakespeare, folks, is definitely banging a drum. He's trying to get an idea across. Okay? He's coming. They leave. We don't know if they are standing behind the arras and their shoes are showing what? But who do we know is on the stage? Ophelia is walking with a book. Just by that very fact, it cannot be a soliloquy. Even if Hamlet just comes out and whispers. To be or not to be? That is the question. What's meant by to be? To live. To exist. Shakespeare, by the way, was the first person to use the word exist in the English language. Nobody else had before him, oddly enough. That is the question. To live or to die? Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing end them. Two choices he's putting forth there. The choices have to do with facing what? What's meant by the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune?
Chaos of life.
Say that again?
The chaos of life.
The chaos of life. The daily crap you go through. Okay, maybe one day it's not crap. Maybe one day it's great. Eventually, crap happens, you know. Whether 'tis what? Nobler in the mind to suffer. What's meant? To be. To endure it. Because the word to suffer, the verb to suffer, means to endure. How? With pain. You don't talk about, I endured the most wonderful thing that's ever happened to you. You say, I enjoyed, I celebrated, endure usually implies, not so good. Or to take arms against a sea of troubles. I'm afraid to even look at it. Line 59. The mixed metaphor of the speech has often been commented on. A later emendation, siege, has sometimes been spoken on the stage. Against a... No, it's not a mixed metaphor. Utter morons, idiots, all of them. Why does he say a sea of troubles? Why does he say a pond of troubles?
There's a lot of troubles.
There's a lot of troubles. What does the sea often do? Massive waves. Go walk out in the sea and try to fight it. Who's going to win? Win every time. Notice, to take arms. Me and the sea, man, we're going to fight. I'm going to punch it hard. Really? Maybe if you're Superman or something, but... And by opposing, that is, the taking arms, and by opposing, using those arms to do what? To end, what's the them referred to? The sea of troubles. And the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. Two options. Endure or suicide. To die. So now he's kind of following up on the second option. Suicide. What happens when you side your suey? You kill yourself. Literally what the words mean. To die. Now he uses a metaphor. To sleep. We use sleep as a metaphor for death. To die, to sleep, no more. What's the no more refer to? What does the no more mean? No more what? No more slings and arrows of outrageous fortune? No more sea of troubles? What does it mean when you see an advertisement? Buy this and get this and more. What's the and more mean? Literally, it's meaningless. It's just filler. Okay? Whenever I get upper division, or when I used to teach graduate students, I'd have a graduate student say, this paper is going to discuss, this idea and many more. I would write, that is just useless, empty verbiage. What do you mean, and more? Tell me what the and more is. Why? Because it was smoke. And I would often write, this is nothing but smoke and mirrors. Where's the beef, as Walter Mondale famously asked Ronald Reagan in a debate. No more means nothing else. To die, to sleep. And by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to, 'tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. Notice the first thing he puts there. Heartache. Why? Is that telling us the greatest problem Hamlet has is with his heart? Yes, it is. Why so? Is it romantic heartache? It's probably involved. Why else does his heart ache? Why is his heart breaking? I mean, he said, break heart down, boy, down. His father's death. It seems particular because it is particular to him. What followed quickly upon his father's death? Mom jumping with dexterity into his uncle's bed. That's rankling him. After the play, there's a thing about Freud, or there's a thing by Freud on repression in Hamlet. Why? Because Freud was so screwed up. Freud, I'll use this terminology, my opinion, you don't have to believe it or not. Everything that Freud saw in other people comes from himself. It's what psychologists call projecting. But not many people think Freud was the one doing all the projecting. So, I wanted to replace father and mother's bed. Yeah, that's probably Freud, folks. But it's not just the heartache. It's what else? The 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. How many of you, you're all young, but how many of you, every now and then, you wake up in the morning and you're sore? Yeah, I just saw a couple of facial reactions. I get up in the morning and it's like, Rice Krispies, snap, crackle, and pop. Knee replacement last year, knee replacement coming up this year, 15 surgeries combined on both knees before the replacements, 4 surgeries this shoulder, 3 on this shoulder, this elbow, these 2 in May. Okay? Why? It's not the years, as a friend of mine says, it's the mileage. I don't do things half-assed. If I do something, I'm going all the way. Hamlet is talking about what does time do to everybody and everything. How many of you have been out west? I don't mean West Tennessee. I mean Rockies, Sierra Nevada. Flown over them if you haven't been to them. Okay? Compare the Rockies and the Sierra Nevada with the Smokies. People go, oh, I'm going to go to the Smokies. We're going to go up to, big, 3,000 feet. I grew up in Central California, Bay Area. We had mountains 3,000 feet right outside San Jose to get over to Santa Cruz or Mount Hamilton. Those are not big mountains. Sierras, hiked at 11,000 feet, backpacked at 11,000 feet. Rockies, just as high. The Rockies and the Sierra Nevada are new. Those are very young mountain ranges. That's why they're so spiky and tall. Compare those with the Smokies. They're like this. They're very old mountains. They're the oldest mountains in North America. They're worn down. Okay? That's what time does. Time is a favorite theme of Shakespeare, more so in the sonnets. Because there, he talks about time wearing us down. The heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. To sleep, 'tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. Consummation means what? Well, you consummate your marriage by having sex on your wedding night or at some point thereafter. Okay? If you haven't done it before then, in which case you're not consummating the marriage because it's not happened yet. Or it's already happened. Consummation means completion. The perfection of something. Not perfection meaning there isn't any fault or error in it. It means it's all done. Like you've had consummation when you finish a paper and turn it in. You can hand it in and go, consummatum est. Frickin', when you turn something in, or an exam or whatever. It's done. It's what all of you are going to be saying when May 4th or whatever rolls around and you're finally done, with this class and the exams and such. It's not just the end, is my point. It's not just done, over. To die, to sleep. He's going to continue that metaphor. To sleep. See, what happens when you sleep? 'Perchance to dream. 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 Why is that the rub? Why is dreaming the rub? Meaning, like when the rubber hits the road, what do you dream of? Remember the speech with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern? They're talking about, his ambition, Denmark's a prison, etc., etc. And Hamlet says, I could be king, a king of infinite space, bounded within a nutshell, were it not for bad dreams. Dreams. So, notice, he's not breaking the metaphor. He's keeping the metaphor of sleep as death. What happens when you sleep? You dream. Are all of your dreams good? I've never met a person who said yes. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil? That is, in that sleep of death, when there is no body anymore, and it's just the soul or mind or whatever you want to call it, must give us pause. So here's death. My life sucks. My heart is broken. I hurt all over. I'm going to take an easy way out. But death doesn't give us this, right? Because I can look out here right now and I can go, oh look, there's somebody walking down the hallway with an AK-47. Duck! Okay? I can't open the door and look that way towards death or that way towards death. Because if I stick my head into death, what happens? Yeah, the rest of me comes. And then I'm there. And then what? And then what? What dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. Why? One of the central questions of every major religion. In fact, a central question of philosophy. Harry Potter asks it. What happens when we die? And certain religions say certain things, and certain religions say other things. And philosophy says, I don't know, because philosophy can't answer that kind of question. Neither can science. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. Why does long life become a calamity? Why do people not, quote unquote, pull the plug when the pain first starts? Which many do. And we have many countries around the world legalizing euthanasia at earlier and earlier ages. So that now, in some countries, it's okay for a teenager who's 17 or 18 years old to go, my life is really bad. I would like to end it. And legally, go get help to do that. Okay? The respect that he's talking about that makes calamity of so long life. He's, look at the gloss. I probably shouldn't say that. Line 67 or so. The consideration. This, he says, there's the consideration that makes calamity of so long life. That is, that makes a calamity. That makes a long life what? Painful, harsh. Oedipus lived a long life, according to the plays. Really long life. But that was part of his suffering. Okay? So he goes on. Who would bear the whips and scorns of time? That's, this kind of stuff. Your body wearing down, breaking apart, mental Alzheimer's and such. The oppressor's wrong. Who's the oppressor? Anybody doing the oppressing of somebody else. That's it. It could be a boss to an employee. It could be a politician to a group of people. It could be a dictator to his people or her people. The proud man's contumely. What's contumely? Arrogance and condescension. Looking down his nose at somebody and going, you know, you're not even worth my time. You're just a little peon. The pangs of despised love. And if I were directing the play, when Hamlet says that line, he looks at Ophelia. And is Hamlet just talking like this? Oh, to be or not to be? No. Because when you're, quote unquote, wrestling with these kinds of questions, what does that mean about the state of your soul? You're a little riled up. Okay? How many of you get in arguments with people and you just talk nice and calmly? You just, oh really? You called my mother a butt? Well, that's not very nice. I think I'm angry at you. Can you tell? I'm really angry. No! The pangs of despised love, the law's delay. We have a phrase in American English, justice delayed is justice denied. That's why the Constitution guarantees it. I don't want to get too political, but there are a bunch of people that this isn't applying to right now. The Constitution guarantees a speedy trial. The insolence of office, that is, an office holder who essentially says, you can't touch me. You get that a lot when a politician has to go to the airport. And they got to go through the scanners. There have been, you can get on YouTube and search for it. There have been all kinds of politicians who've gone, do you know who I am? And the TSA nerd making, $35,000 a year goes, yes, sir, you're a senator. Now get your ass through the metal detector. It doesn't matter who you are, okay? Or you're the wife of a senator. Even worse, pat down, Insolence of office and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes. Who would endure all of this stuff when what? When he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin. A bare bodkin is a short knife. Bare meaning unsheathed. You take it out, how can you kill yourself with a knife? Whole bunch of ways. I mean, we could get creative. I could say, write a paper on all the different ways you can kill yourself with a knife. And I can guarantee you, within 48 hours, I'd be getting a call from a dean, a provost, etc. Okay? You can slit your wrist, you can slit your throat, you can stab yourself in the heart, you can stab yourself in the eye, you can stab yourself through the roof of your mouth. I mean, just a whole bunch of ways. Don't. Who would fardels? Burdens. One version of the play has burthens, B-U-R-T-H-E-N, which is just an old spelling for the word burdens. Who would burdens or fardels bear to grunt and sweat under a weary life? But, what's the but? This is why people take what life throws at them. But that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns. In other words, put that in a modern English colloquial phrase, better the devil you know, life now, than the devil you don't know, what comes after. I said at the beginning when we first began discussing Hamlet, it's Shakespeare's most religious play. He's getting here at a central human, all human condition idea. Why are we here? Because why are we here gets to what happens when we're not here anymore. The dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveler returns, puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have, the devils we know, than fly to others that we know not of. He uses a verb there that we don't usually use as a verb. We use what's the verb as a noun. Puzzles the will. You can go to a bookstore, and you can't buy many books anymore at bookstores because they're all full of games and other stuff, and buy a puzzle. Why is it called a puzzle? It's not clear from the beginning, right? You open the box, you dump it out, there's no clarity there. It's not whole. You know what it looks like because of the cover or because of the image on the box front. What if you go and you buy a puzzle, and on the front, the image is just of a rectangle of blue? What's that puzzle going to be? Just a rectangle of blue. What's easier, that puzzle or a puzzle with a bunch of other stuff? A bunch of other stuff, because there you get distinctions, etc. But he says, this stuff puzzles the will. That is, it makes the will unclear. The will, the volition, the desire to do something. It puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we don't know of. Thus, conscience does make cowards of us all. In your gloss says, conscience. Probably inhibition by the faculty of reasoning, restraining the will from doing wrong. Really? Is that what conscience is? Because most people would say conscience is merely that thing inside that we don't define that says good, bad. Is the conscience always rational? Not always. Because the conscience also suggests or weighs or evaluates. You know, I think I'm really in love. Should I ask her to marry me? Is that a right or wrong answer? Is that well, let me pull out a legal pad and do the pros and cons. And so you go up to, I'll use my wife as an example. I go up to the girl I'm dating, I say, you know, here's my legal pad, pros and cons on why we should get married. Take a look at it. Tell me what you think. What's going to happen in that situation? Every time. No, because love isn't what? It ain't rational, folks. Believe me, 38 years, it ain't rational. He goes on. So conscience makes what? It makes cowards of us all. Why? Because it makes us stop the things we plan to do. It stops our wills from proceeding. Let's go back to the language that is used with Hamlet and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Ambition. Conscience says, whoa there, buddy. Slow down. I wish more people running for political office would have this kind of conscience. You know? I was telling a friend the other night, I've come to the point, pretty much anyone who wants to run for president, nope. Anybody who wants it, too bad to run for it. Probably shouldn't be it. Anyways, and thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with the pale cast of thought. What's the native hue of resolution? Your gloss is entirely BS. Natural color. Yes, that is what native hue literally means. The color you were born with. Okay? But that's not what the text says. It's the native hue of resolution, of being resolved to do something, being determined. What color is that? That's what native hue of resolution is getting at. So when you're really resolved to do something, what's that native hue? Let me put it this way. You're in an argument with somebody, and you really think you're right, and they really think they're right. that argument gets more and more and more heated. What color does your face become? Red. That's what he means. You have to do something physically. Your car breaks down. You're in a lane. You've got to get it out of the lane. You're the only one there. Maybe you've never had to do this. I've had to push by myself a broken down car before, from this lane to the emergency lane. So you've got one hand on the steering wheel and one hand on the door jamb, and you're pushing 2,000 to 5,000 pounds. You can do it. Even some of you smaller, lighter people, you can do it. Why? Because the native hue of resolution will kick in, and you'll go, if I don't, I'm going to get hit. Okay? It's the color your face becomes when you're pulling out all the stops. And it does what? It's sicklied over with the pale cast of thought. Why does thought make your face pale? And why is that described as sickly over? What happens when people get sick? They get pale. Notice, it's thought that does that. Because thought says what? You shouldn't do this. Don't do it. In enterprises of a great pitch, like angle, really hard in moment, it also means shooting for the moon, man. Like you're going to do everything. What? With this regard, what regard? Consequences. That's largely what he's getting at. What are the consequences of or not to be? Death. Their currents turn awry. The enterprise's currents turn. What's meant by current? My wife and I went down to Stones River the other day. Saturday morning, right after the real big storms came through on Friday. Stones River was way up. Part of the Greenway was, underwater and stuff. And now water is just moving fast. Currents, right? And that current does what? It follows the course of the river. He's suggesting here, the current, however, curves this way. That enterprise has now gone off the tracks. And it loses the name of action. And if it loses the name of action, then it becomes what? Inaction. Remember Hamlet's last soliloquy? After his talk with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, he meets the players. He says to the chief player, could you do, 16 lines or so if I give him? He goes, yeah. They all leave. Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I. Why? Because here I have a father killed and I've not done anything. He's bound, he tells us, by inaction. But then he gets to the end of the soliloquy, and what does he say? It's said that devils sometimes take on a form to tempt people. And he tells us now why he's going to write those 16 lines. Because the plays the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of a king. In other words, he says, in his other words, I'll have proof more relative. What's his proof now that Claudius killed Hamlet Sr.?
His reaction to his line.
When the play comes, yes. What's his proof now? The ghost told him. And he's like, maybe it is my father's spirit, or maybe it's a damned spirit, maybe it's a demon, and it's trying to entice me to hell. I better make sure, because what happens if it entices me to hell? Doors closed. No coming back. Undiscovered country, Soft, the Pharaohphilia. Is that because Hamlet just now goes, well, golly gee, look, Ophelia's coming out on the stage. sure as hell better not be. She is on the stage this entire time. My reading, and I could be wrong, is when Hamlet walks out and starts to say to be or not to be. Notice what I just did. I took a slight step forward looking this way, and then I did that. I think that's exactly what Hamlet does. He walks out here, he notices Ophelia, and he's like, damn it. They've even got her. Nymph, in thy orisons be all my sins remembered. Orisons, prayers. Now, is he saying, Ophelia, when you pray, say, in God, remember that Hamlet is jealous. Remember that Hamlet is proud. Remember that Hamlet is arrogant. Remember that Hamlet's a jerk. Remember that, make him burn, God. Or is it, and God forgive Hamlet for? Good, my Lord, how does your honor this many a day? How many days have passed from the beginning of the play? Or, let me rephrase it. How many days have passed since Polonius told Ophelia, make your presence more scarcer from Hamlet? I know, a little grammatical, more scarcer, but I'm pretty sure that's what's in the play. Don't allow Hamlet to talk to you. How many days have gone by? Play doesn't tell us, other than this. It's many a day. Is many 2 days, 3 days, 4 days? I think, a couple, a few, several, many, a week, 2 weeks. I humbly thank you. Well. My Lord, I have remembrances of yours. As she reaches in or reaches down to a pocket, it pulls out a sheaf or a bound collection of papers that I have longed to redeliver. I pray you now receive them. And she holds them out. No, not I. I never gave you aught. She's like, my honored Lord, you know right well you did. And with them, words of so sweet breath composed has made the things more rich. What does she mean by that? It's like, Hamlet, these were inspired words. Sweet breath composed. And when she read them, she inspired them into her. What's her point? Oh, they're good. Hamlet, oh, you are good. Has made the things more rich. Their perfume lost, take these again. In other words, the spell's been broken, Hamlet. How and why is the perfume of Hamlet's words in these pieces of paper lost? What happened to the perfume? Laertes, Polonius. Stupid girl. Hamlet doesn't really love you. He just wants to have sex with you. Okay? By the way, you can go back to that passage from the diary. And it says somewhere in there about, bottom of 1341. Top of 1342. Ophelia, played by Kate Winslet, and Hamlet have been having an affair. Yes, they have been to bed together because we want this relationship to be as serious as possible. Okay? Kenneth Branagh's mind, relationship can't be serious unless they're having sex. The words of the play, how do I put it? Don't go that way. They don't support that. Their perfume lost. Take these again. Why? These don't mean anything to me anymore. For to the noble mind, rich gifts wax poor when givers prove unkind. Unkind there means unnatural, as well as not nice. What is she saying? I believed your words once. I don't believe them anymore. Why doesn't she believe them? Because her father told her. These things that she's getting ready to hand back, these are traps. And if she hadn't already been trapped, had sex, then this scene would not make a whole lot of sense. In other words, if she and Hamlet have already been having sex, then the whole speech by Laertes and Polonius would be what? Meaningless, kind of redundant. Because she'd kind of go, don't worry about that. We're already sleeping together. I know what he wants. I want it too. All right? Hamlet. Are you honest? My lord? Are you fair? Okay, you've got a gloss for honest. Refers to truthfulness or honesty, as well as chaste. Okay? My lord? Meaning, what the hell are you talking about? Are you fair? Meaning, are you beautiful? What do you mean? That if you be honest, truthful, and chaste, and fair, beautiful, your honesty, your truthfulness, your chastity should admit no discourse, that is, no conversation with, no intercourse with, not sexual, but intercourse or, he says discourse, like commerce, trading between, your beauty. If you are honest and fair, if you're truthful, chaste, and beautiful, then those three things should have nothing to do with your beauty. Why? Because he's saying if they do, your beauty is going to undermine your chastity and your truthfulness. Could beauty, my lord, have better commerce, interaction than with honesty? She's saying, shouldn't beauty go hand in hand with chastity and truthfulness? Isn't beauty, in a sense, a virtue to be striven for? He says, yes, you're right. For the power of beauty will sooner transform honesty, chastity, truthfulness, from what it is, chastity, truthfulness, to a bawd. Use the word that was used earlier when Polonius said, do you know my lord? Verily, thou art a fishmonger. That's what bawd means. Pimp. Madam, in this context, because a pimp is male and a madam is female. From what it is to a bawd, then the force of honesty can translate beauty into his likeness. That is, the force of honesty, chastity, truthfulness can't do what? Can't make beauty chaste and true. It's easier to make honesty a bawd, okay? This was sometime a paradox, right? Paradox, like having two mutually contradictory statements that are both true. Virgin mother. How can you be a virgin mother? It's a paradox. But now the time gives it proof. I did love you once. Did. Past tense, once. Not anymore. What else does did mean? It's emphatic. It's called the emphatic do. Okay? Oh, I really loved you, is what he's telling her. Indeed, my lord, you made me believe so. What does her reply say? What is she really saying? I loved you too. You should not have believed me. What? I did love you once. Yeah, and I really believed it. You shouldn't have loved me. You shouldn't have believed me. Why? For virtue cannot so inoculate our old stock, but we shall relish of it. I loved you not. Okay? Old stock. He's talking about the old Adam. He's talking about fallen human nature. Virtue, he says, can't do what? Can't inoculate. And your gloss mentions, which is why I've got this image. The gloss mentions grafting. Like when you graft one kind of tree onto another kind of tree. I've got a tree in our front yard. It's called a fruit cocktail tree. The stalk, if I remember right, the trunk is like a peach. But it's got peach, plum, apricots that grow off it. Why? Because you take this branch, cut it off, and you take a branch from another tree and graft it on. So what's he talking about? Our old stock, fallen human nature, cannot be inoculated on or grafted onto merely by virtue. That is, all the virtuous living in the world won't do what? It won't wipe out this original sin. The sin of Adam and Eve that, according to St. Augustine, gets passed on genetically, kind of a thing. Okay? But we shall relish of it. Relish of what? The old stock. Paul says in one of his letters, I do the thing I don't want to do. I don't do the thing I ought to do. He prays to God 3 times, remove this thorn from my side. It's not a physical thorn. It's metaphorical. He has a sin that he can't give up. We don't know what it is. Okay? It's kind of like what? The black veil each of us wear. That, according to Parson Hooper, is not what? All of our sins that we hoard up. No. It's, okay, God, you can have all these. But this one here, no. I enjoy this one too much. I'm keeping this one. You can have all those. Okay? I loved you not. Wait, he said, I did love you once. Now, I loved you not. Well, which is it? I was the more deceived. Get thee to a nunnery. Non sequitur, that is, it does not follow. What do you mean? Why shouldst thou be a breeder of sinners? The old stock. Because what's going to happen, according to the Catholic Church, if she has sex, inside of marriage or out, she's not going to have a perfect, sinless child. Catholic Church, this time taught, newborn babies, if they weren't baptized soon, if that child died, that child went to hell. Period. No getting out. Which is why baptisms were done usually within a week of birth. He says, me, I'm indifferent honest. That is, I'm moderately virtuous. I follow this virtue for this virtue, but, I kind of like this vice, this vice, this vice. It's like the 10 Commandments, no, they're really suggestions. And the first 5, yeah, I'll do those. But lusting after the neighbor's wife, no, that's the one I want, Why should, skipping a bit, such fellows as I do, what should such fellows as I do crawling between earth and heaven? Why crawling? Why not standing up, striding confidently across the stage of the world? Because like the sun that breeds maggots in that carrion, we're nothing but maggots walking on this earth, crawling on this earth. We are errant knaves, errant. We've lost our direction. Believe none of us. How could Ophelia interpret that last line? Believe none of us. Now, he might be saying, so some guy walks up to you and tries a line. Don't believe it. So another guy, takes you out, wines and dines you, says, I don't believe it. What else could it mean? Hamlet could be saying, don't believe me. Don't believe me what? Don't believe a word of what I have just told you. I did love you once. I loved you not. Believe none of us. That might mean, I'm not saying it does, that Hamlet's saying, Ophelia, wink, wink, I really do love you. Get to a nunnery. Why? Get out of the presence of men. Not humanity, men. Because men, Hamlet is kind of implying, they do want one thing, right? Sex. Where's your father? What? At home, my lord. Why does she lie to him? Where is her father? Behind the arras, in some place where he can hear everything. Notice what Hamlet says. Let the door be shut upon him, that he may play the fool nowhere but in his own house. I think Hamlet knows exactly where Polonius is. And he is saying, Polonius, keep your nose out of my business. You could play the fool in your own house. You play the fool out here where the big boys play, and your nose is going to get bruised. And Hamlet leaves. I'm not going to talk about the rest of what he says. He talks about painting themselves, all that. We don't have time. We'll pick up with Ophelia's response. We're just about 10 lines behind my first class. I'm going to put up a quiz over Act 3. It'll be due like Thursday night. Quiz over Act 3. We'll finish Act 3 on Wednesday.